1999, the world's population was estimated to have reached 6 billion. That's 3 times the number there were only 75 years ago, and it's still rising by almost 3 people every second. But it's thought that half of all pregnancies are unplanned or unwanted. Many of the mothers will die needlessly in childbirth. Many of the children will be born into poverty, and some of those will die. There are now around 150 more people in the world than there were when this program started just 1 minute ago.
Every year, 78 million people are added to the population of the world. That is really tremendous, and 95% of this population increase is happening in developing countries.
The governments of the world have set an ambitious target. They plan to halve poverty by the year 2015, and they see greater access to contraception as their key tool.
It's impossible in a society where you have no control over the number of children you have to emerge from the cycle of repeated childbearing, looking after the children, to emerge economically to the state where you can no longer be poor. So control over your reproduction, and that is contraception, is the absolutely essential component of the alleviation of poverty.
Economically, the effect of unwanted pregnancies may be felt hardest in developing countries, but they occur everywhere, even here in Scotland, where the population level has been static for decades. It's in Edinburgh where much effort to find new forms of contraception has been focused, at the Centre for Reproductive Biology.
The main problem in the developing countries is the lack of any form of contraception in a lot of them. But equally in developed countries such as this one, even though there are a lot of methods, they're clearly unsatisfactory, and there are still a lot of unwanted pregnancies.
Here, they're not looking for theoretical concepts, they're looking for practical solutions that are likely to turn into real products. Most recent research has concentrated at the point where fertilization takes place, inside the woman's body. Here, the main potential targets for contraceptive attack are the tiny egg which is released each month from one of the ovaries, and the sperm that are attracted by the egg and swim through the uterus from the vagina. It's the sperm that fertilize the egg that so far have largely avoided the limelight.
The methods that we are particularly interested in approaching are the male methods, the production of sperm, and also methods that affect the development and release of the egg in the female.
In most developed countries, modern methods of contraception have become relatively commonplace, and since the 1940s, the subject of much cutting-edge medical research. But despite this work, there is still no perfect method.
Contraception has been around since ancient times, and it seems likely that most ancient societies used some sort of natural method. People, for example, in the Middle Ages, used all sorts of materials that we wouldn't think of as medicine or pharmacy, such as dirt or animal dung, a mixture of magical and natural ingredients, some herbs, some we would find extraordinary, either placed in the vagina or taken internally in the hope of preventing pregnancy.
It's not really known how many of these methods may have worked, but some of the ingredients, such as lemon juice and vinegar, probably would have had some effect killing sperm. Casanova was said to recommend that women used half a cut lemon squeezed out as a cervical cap.
Look what we had to put up with. I called it Geronimo, my friend. Compared with the condoms of today, it was like wearing the inner tube of a cycle. It wasn't disposable like the modern condoms. It was designed to be used again and again. It was like having a bath with your socks on, but it never stopped me in no way.
It wasn't until rubber technology came that the modern sheath, as we know it, came into existence. And even then it wasn't really as we know it, because you need the very fine latex rubber to produce the modern sheath. We've also got rubber contraceptives for women coming into particular use in the early part of the 20th century, because they were very much favoured by the birth control campaigns. Purely obstructive methods like sponges, which were placed in the vagina soaked with vinegar, for example. Again, a lot of this information passing from woman to woman, not really a matter for medical attention at all until about the middle of the century.
The development of the intrauterine device, or IUD, brought us some extraordinarily shaped contraptions, which were placed directly inside the uterus. Their use became widespread in the 1950s, but it's invasive, and many women had problems with it. The next major breakthrough was truly cutting edge, and it's been the forerunner of many new ideas since. The oral contraceptive pill has been taken by 100 million women since it was introduced in the 1960s. It differed from all other methods because it relied on changing the normal levels of hormones in women. It effectively fools the body into thinking that it's already pregnant, causing no more eggs to be released. Any sperm that make it into the uterus and fallopian tubes simply have nothing to fertilise.
Well, of course, the development of the pill, the female pill, changed everything, because that was a trouble-free method of contraception. And in the end, it was an affordable method. For several decades, the pill was seen as the best solution by many people. But there is a risk with the pill. And many women don't like taking something that they feel interferes with their natural condition. And I suppose they feel that men ought to take some of the responsibility again.
But that's not easy. There are dozens of methods of contraception available, but none of them are perfect, and virtually all of them are for women. The condom sits alone in the contraceptive medicine cabinet as still the only method for men, apart from vasectomy. Perhaps not surprisingly, trying to develop new contraceptive methods for men has become the focal point for much of the work at the Centre for Reproductive Biology.
Well, this centre was set up, nearly 30 years ago, to investigate basic reproductive processes in order to try and develop new methods of either contraception or infertility, treating infertility.
One of our main purposes is to try and investigate a new method of contraception for men, because right now the methods that men have to choose from are very limited, either condoms or vasectomy. And for a whole host of reasons, pharmaceutical companies are shying away from contraceptive research.
It's not a terribly attractive area for two main reasons. One, it's expensive and quite a risk to produce new contraceptives because you give them to healthy men and women, and therefore they have to be absolutely safe as well as effective. And secondly, in an increasingly litigious society, particularly in the United States, they're quite likely to be sued. And many drug companies have withdrawn products in recent years for this reason. So what we're doing really here is to try and bridge the gap between the basic idea as developed in the laboratory and the stage where a pharmaceutical company would take it on for product development. With fertilization, we looked at whether we could immunize men or women against sperm or eggs. But for a variety of reasons, we felt that two approaches were likely to yield products within the next 5 to 10 years, and we've chosen those. The first one is the use of a drug which blocks the action of the natural hormone in pregnancy, progesterone, which is necessary for the establishment of pregnancy, and that's a drug called mifepristone. Although it was discovered 20 years ago, it's been used as an abortion pill, and it's acquired the sort of...
While work still continues on other techniques, it's the idea of a pill for men that looks most likely to attract a manufacturer. A man is in some ways a difficult target. While a woman produces 1 egg a month, a man normally produces millions of sperm in a day. The testes are in effect gorged with sperm. Although the physiology in men is different, the hormonal method being developed in Edinburgh is in some ways not that new.
Well, it works the same way as it works in women. The combined pill in women is made up of a gestogen and an estrogen. And what it does is it suppresses the ovulation in the ovaries so the egg doesn't come out. Now, we take the same gestogen as is used in the female pill and combine it with the male hormone, testosterone, rather than the female hormone, estradiol, in men, and it suppresses sperm production.
The basic idea is simple. Gestogen, which can be taken as a pill, suppresses the creation of new sperm in the testes. The drawback is that it also suppresses the secretion of the male hormone testosterone. And that's a real problem. Without it, men lose many of their male characteristics. So in this trial, the plan was to replace that lost testosterone using an implant under the skin.
Testosterone is important for all the aspects of makes men as they are, which obviously have good things and bad things, but it's responsible for all your sexual characteristics of hair growth, sexual behaviour, interest in sex, but also more subtle things like moodiness. Men who don't have enough testosterone are often irritable and generally fed up with life, tired, lethargic, makes you feel pretty lousy. So you need the right amounts. The problem with giving men testosterone is you can't give it as a pill, because if you take it as a pill, the liver destroys it all immediately and none actually really gets into the bloodstream. So you have to give it either as an injection or as some form of implant.
But in order to bridge the gap between theory and commercial product, they had to check that the idea of a male pill is not only going to be effective, but will also be acceptable. They wanted to know if there was really a need for a male pill and if men would take on such a drug cocktail. They started by asking the men from the local fire brigade.
Could you tell me about all the methods of family planning that you know about? First for men, then for women, and then I'll ask you if you've used any statements. But I would like you to tell me if you strongly agree, moderately agree.
After the surveys came the trials. Scott Cross was one of the first volunteers to take part.
I decided to take part in the trial because when Julie was on the pill, she got really bad moods and she didn't feel very well on it.
I've tried lots of different brands, variations of pill. There isn't many other things that I can try either. So Scott suggested that he find out about a male contraceptive, and when we found out there was one and he said he was going to do it, then I was more than happy for him to go ahead and try that.
The female hormone gave me much more of a feminine side, so they had to combat that with the testosterone to put sort of the manly feelings back, right? And it really balanced out well because I didn't feel too different.
I didn't notice any change as such in him. After a while, I think there was a slight increase in sex drive. Whether that was an excuse or not, I don't know. But that was the only thing I noticed different about him.
Working with contraception, it's unique in that we not only have to look at the physiological aspects of it, what happens in the body, but we have to find out in various cultures how people feel about it. So it was essential to not only test it in the UK, but to also in other cultures, and that's why we have centres in China and in Africa.
Going to Nigeria was really a bit of a leap in the dark, because no male contraceptive studies have actually ever been carried out in Africa in the past. There's a lot of problems with contraception in Nigeria, particularly insofar as there isn't very much, and clearly they have a huge need for it. It's an enormously populated country.
The Nigerian centre is in the old trading town of Shagamu, about an hour north of Lagos. It was the last to join the Contraceptive Development Network, and the team from Edinburgh have come to the research clinic here to assess the results.
High population breeds a lot of problems. For some women, they need assistance during assistance not to be pregnant at a time when it poses a greater hazard. Let's say a woman has just been through an illness. It is not the time for her to be pregnant. So we're hoping that people will see family planning, contraception, not only in terms of too much population or reducing population, but also seeing it in terms of women's health.
The chance of a woman dying in childbirth in Nigeria is over 100 times the global average, and the introduction of new methods of contraception may not be an overnight success. Modern methods are currently used by only 6% of the population. Many of the rest still rely on more traditional family planning.
We know that quite a number of women use traditional methods. What we don't know is how effective these are.
So this is the feather to rub the stomach up. After rubbing it with it, then we hang it.
There are some that
we prepare a soup with it. Then we remove the ring. We tell the woman to lick that ring and then put it on his finger. After using it, then the family planning has started. The birth control is on. It's very effective. We have 7 months after we have removed the ring, he got pregnant.
There are some concoctions that are made and used in connection with the padlock. And the idea is that once the padlock is locked, it locks the womb so that no conception can take place. As you received. The other issue that affects the population growth, of course, is probably the factor of polygamy. That within most of our cultures, a man can have more than one wife. And if a man has four wives, every one of
Understanding these many cultural differences helps the team interpret the results of the trial. As the trial ends, the team from the clinic check up on those who've taken part in the study. Michaela Adeniji has only one wife, but 3 children.
There's no problem, and I'm physically fit, eating very well. Even I can say that I put more weight.
A couple of men say that they felt more.
In the program, my performance is better. It's beyond what is happening before. Because before I can only make fun less.
The results are encouraging. Sperm count has been reduced to 0, just as it had in Scotland. Side effects are minimal, and the only significant complaints seem to be concerns about the method of delivery.
In this study, the testosterone preparation is introduced in as a capsule, which is inserted under the skin as an implant under the skin. A number of men find that intolerable or not acceptable.
The implants are not ideal, and we're only really giving them as a prototype because it's clear that a number of drug companies are working towards improving testosterone delivery mechanisms, and that basically means long-acting injections, and they will be the way forward, I'm sure. The pellet is really just a prototype that was the best available at the moment, because it's not an ideal way of giving testosterone, really.
Another overwhelming problem in Nigeria. On the edge of Shagamu lies one of the AIDS hotspots of Africa. Many women work as prostitutes in this area, and Kai's research has shown that around half of them are HIV positive.
The advantage of condom is just to prevent the sexual transmission disease. Let's assume that you don't want to have fun with your wife, you go outside, you understand what I'm telling you. Now, using condom is not advisable to me.
Within stable family relationships where one man and his wife, one wife, want to control their fertility, if both of them start off HIV negative, then this could be a good method for them.
Well, there is a huge problem with sexually transmitted disease, particularly in many developing countries, and in Africa in particular. And that is a high priority, it must be, for most responsible governments and international agencies. But that doesn't mean that you should abandon effective methods of contraception. You compound the problem if...
The team has now succeeded in interesting a major pharmaceutical company to take on further development of the male pill. The Dutch company Olorun already manufactures many different contraceptive methods.
I think the Edinburgh Group has been very instrumental in two things. First of all, they showed that it is possible with the progestogen, which is one of the components of the male pill, that with the progestogen you're able to completely suppress sperm production without major side effects. And secondly, they have done also surveys among men in different parts of the world showing that the acceptability of this method is actually, perhaps quite surprisingly, quite high. I think as soon as these phase 2 trials have been completed, we have to look at the data, and when everything is okay, the drug is safe and it works, then we'll go to the next phase, the phase 3 studies, and that will take another 3 or 4 years.
We know that the more contraception options that exist, the more likely that the given population is going to practice family planning.
It's important to realize that women are different, couples are different, and every couple would like to choose their own method they prefer. And male contraception definitely is one of the options that should be available as well.
So that is why we should welcome the development of a pill for men. I mean, that is something that has been lacking for many years. I mean, it's not unusual that when I go to places around the world to be asked when we are going to have a method for men.
There are now about 4,000 more people on the planet than there were at the beginning of this program. Many of those were not planned, and they bring with them poverty and unhappiness. The eventual solution could well be more contraceptive choice. If it is, then the male pill being pioneered in Edinburgh and Shagamu could well be the next major development. In some ways, it's becoming a reality already. At the Science Museum in London, the male pill is the centrepiece of a new exhibition on contraception. It's a method that gives couples more control over their own fertility. And it's reversible.
After I stopped the trial for a further 6 months, I had to go back into the hospital once a month and give a sperm count to ensure everything was returning back to normal. And it definitely did.
They told us 6 months, not to expect anything for 6 months, and 5 months later we suspected I was pregnant again, so it works.